Stellaris is sometimes described as a game vast and full of secrets, dark and full of secrets in some cases. However, the big problem with the game, at least in its current iteration, is just that once you've made first contact with an empire, you will immediately see everything that they have available to them, which is problematic because it kind of takes the mystery out of the situation. What does the empire have? How far do their borders stretch? Is it as far as my science ships have gone out and managed to find whatever? Their borders are closed. Can I see what's behind there? Well, in the current iteration, yes, you can. So all of a sudden, you see that they have a Dyson sphere sitting in the middle of the empire, and that does seem like a tasty target, so you should probably go ahead and claim that system for the eventual war that will arise over that particular target. However, this is going to change. Last week we talked a little bit about the new first contact protocols. This week we're going to be talking about the extension of the fog of war system and the intel that ties into said system. So fog of war, as you may have already known, is a system within strategy games that basically means, hey, we don't know what's going on in this particular area because we don't have any vision, we don't have any radar, we don't have any intel, which is what we're going to be talking about shortly. So being able to see just the enemy capital, we now have a good idea of where it is, as well as their initial borders. Not all of them, only what our science ships have seen is going to be part of the upcoming update, which is very exciting because the idea of getting out there in the space and be like, I wonder what's going on over there, even though I have no idea what is going on, is rather interesting to me, knowing that a galactic crisis has popped up somewhere. You don't necessarily know that it's happening until you all of a sudden have the intel and everything has changed. If you ever play any games like Crusader Kings or EU4, all of a sudden you're playing as, say, India or something along those lines, and all of a sudden you get view on Western Europe, and you've seen all of a sudden that Russia or France has eaten the entire continent alive. These are the kind of situations that you can run into. And another example of this would be in Stellaris, at least, finding out that the borders of the bordering empire that you don't know much about are a lot further and a lot deeper than you initially expected. And this is going to really change things up within the game itself. Knowing where the enemy is going to be a dedicated thing that you're going to need to spend time on by collecting, once again, intel. So let's dive a little bit deeper on what you can actually get with said intel. So the system itself is primarily designed to make sure that alien empires are mysterious and also unknown. You don't know what they're up to because you don't know much about them. So initially, a lot of information that you will see about an enemy empire will be hidden until, of course, you gather more of said information, which means that the intel game is going to be a core aspect of the exploration mechanic within Stellaris, something that is currently very, very good at the start of the game, but then slows down to a complete and total halt once the mid-game arrives. There is nothing more to investigate, so there is no more exploration. The intel system is aiming to change this. And with the screenshot that we have right here, right now, we can see a couple of things, like what is the intel level that we have? What do we know about their fleets? What do we know about their science? What do we know about their civics, ethics, etc., etc.? So all of that stuff is discoverable slowly but steadily over time. You can get this sort of material, this sort of information on your quote-unquote target by getting things like diplomatic packs, research agreements, commercial packs, defensive packs, that sort of thing. Trust goes up. Of course, the trust system is very important in influencing alien empires by sending envoys, and make sure that they trust you more is really, really important for those against those defensive pacts. And also something else, which is currently redacted, but I'm pretty darn sure it's spies. pretty darn sure they're currently redacting the actual physical spy system. So yeah, the intel categories is, for instance, low government intel, where you have 10 intel, where basically you will be able to see things like enemy empire, their authority, their ethics, where their capital is. If you have anything below that, you won't know any of that besides maybe their border. And if they close that, then you won't be able to explore anything. Then there is level 40, which reveals things like star bases as well as relative military power. So you have a good idea what is going on within the grand scheme of the galaxy and whether or not the enemy is on par with you and vice versa. So this is going to be a really important aspect of the game when it comes to scoping out the enemy and trying to figure out whether or not they are going to be a problem in the future. Then there is intel, once again, level 40 again. I'm sure this is a typo in the dev diary. I'm pretty sure the previous one is level 30 or 25. Medium governmental intel, basically showing their civics and origins, which also ties into knowing what their economy is capable of, what kind of empire base they have. Do they have a ring world? Are they voidborn? Do they have any special mechanics behind them that I need to watch out for? And then finally, there's intel level 50, which shows you the opinion breakdown and also which diplomatic pacts they have with other empires. And that one right there is a huge deal. It basically means that you don't just want to roll into a war with a neighboring empire just because they're smaller than you and their territory looks mighty tasty. Now, if you don't know what their diplomacy level is like and whether or not they got some bigger friends up the block that you don't know about, then this could be a real problem. Because if you don't know that they have a defensive pact until you've started a war and they start to stomp your star bases, then you've got yourself a big problem. So that medium diplomatic intel modifier is going to be a huge deal within the game, and I'm really looking forward to scope out this particular scenario because it's so important now to get information, and that's something that I've really been craving for such a long time. And this is also really interesting because it can tie into things like a potential religion system at some point in the future. That would be cool. But yeah, having intel on another empire is really influenced by the intel categories: governmental, military, diplomatic, etc. You can also have higher levels of intel in different categories based on your normal level of intel. One example is intel reports, and apparently that's something that's going to be discussed in future dev diaries. I'm sure, once again, that's going to be all about them spies, because then dev reports, intel reports need to come from somewhere. So yeah, intel reports are apparently going to be a thing, and they are going to need to be constantly updated because intel stales over time. If you don't have enough intel about an enemy, or you get intel about an enemy and then you just don't do any intelligence gathering on said target, the information is going to become stale. If you have a certain amount of information about an enemy, that is never going to stay the way it is. If you feel that you know everything about their fleet power but you haven't looked at them in a while, then the influence is going to be stale and you're going to need to get an update on your reporting. Same thing about technology as well as economy. So these are all very important things that you need to keep in mind with this new intel system that is coming up. It's fascinating to me. I really like this idea about what is coming up. But yeah, intel reports, apparently they last 720 days, so just over 3 years, and they will give you high level of military intel. But once again, those spies, I really think that is what is behind them here and what is currently redacted. But yeah, there's a lot of very interesting stuff coming out in the next update. Now with the updates to the Fog of War and really making the galaxy mysterious once again. Being able to be an omnipresent or what's the word I'm looking for here? Omniscient, that's the one. And knowing exactly where every empire is on the map, what they're doing, how their borders are expanding. You are God and with your eye in the sky. I've never really been a big fan of that, and this should really fix that gap in my opinion. Still though, there's going to be people out there that are not going to like this. Feel free to leave your comments down in the comments, because I'm really looking forward to what you think about this particular system, because it is quite sighting. We're gonna go and wrap up this video here. If you have not seen it yet, I've also done a video about the wonders of diplomatic power and how it is actually calculated. Feel free to go and check that out. There's a thing on your screen right now where you can go and click it. Make sure you do so, because we're going to go dive into math. And turns out that pops actually need to be happy to have a modifier when it comes to the galactic community. Who knew? It's not really said anywhere in the game. So thank you so much for watching, and thank you to my patrons for making this video possible. And until next time, take good care of yourselves. And remember, keep your friends close, but keep your enemies even closer.